I'm excited to welcome Matt Tidwell to the show today. He is the CEO and founder of the Nashville-based learning and development company called ThinkThru. He brings years of experience in building award-winning courses and revenue-generating training products for companies large and small. Now, prior to launching ThinkThru, Tidwell actually served as a business analyst on the process innovation team within the global consulting firm Deloitte. However, since he launched in entrepreneurship, there was no going back. And ThinkThru has actually made a big impact on supporting digital training initiatives across companies all around the world. So much so that these programs have served tens of thousands of different learners and generated over millions in revenue for clients. Matt's a really interesting guy, and I'm excited to have him on the show today. And I hope you enjoy our conversation around education and customer experiences. Hey, Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, Rebecca, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for being a part. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know Matt, we actually just recently met, but then realized we had all kinds of things in common. He's a drummer, has a huge passion for education, and is making a really big impact in the technology space as well. So I asked him to join the show today. We're going to talk through all of those topics and more. But I wanted to start on a topic that was really intriguing when I was first talking to Matt about potentially being a part of this show. And that is around how education is a crucial part to customer experiences. And in this day and age, just branding and people knowing who you are and what your product does is not enough to actually get them to buy, but you have to educate your customer. So Matt, can you talk a little bit about your passion around that and how you actually educate your customer and help your customers do the same for their customers?
So I guess to set this up, my journey into the customer education space, I went to school to be a teacher and an educator, work in public schools. And I really thought that was going to be my path for a while. And I quickly navigated, not really intentionally, but I quickly navigated into technology, really just based on opportunity. And what I found is that a lot of the skills that I had as an educator, it's not that they were missing, but it was a unique kind of asset that I had at that moment in the tech space that I was working in. And, I realized that in larger companies, learning and development is kind of an HR function, I guess, because they think it's, people are in HR, that's all people things. So training's for people, so that should be in HR. But the tech companies that I was working with had a really unique opportunity at the time because they were building really sophisticated things in highly regulated industries. There were a lot of rules and compliance pieces around it. And it was just ripe for educating the customer, not only on what their products were, what their service was, but also on the surrounding like legislation and compliance issues around it. And so at the same time, they're trying to sell and support a product. They're also trying to get their customers up to speed on what the industry was doing. And so this was probably 8 or 9 years ago when all of this was happening, when I first started realizing that customer education could be a thing. And so, I started down that path in the tech space. And I think you're starting to see now customer education. You even have a director of customer education at some companies. You have customer success and training. You have all those different roles and titles now in tech companies that didn't really exist when I first started this. And so, I don't know. I think it's really, really exciting to see that happen. But I think your question was talk about the importance of customer education and how that plays into experiences. And I think really smart brands are connecting with customers in ways that they haven't before. Customer education is kind of that blend of like sales, product support, product development, marketing, kind of like all merging together into one location, like one department. And customer education gets to leverage really the best of all three teams to create new products, create new ways to, have meaningful experiences with customers. And it's just really like a long-term way to improve your customer's life, at the same time also supporting your service, making life better on the product side. So,
well, that's great. I think a lot of times companies hesitate to go down that path because it's a lot of heavy lifting. It's a lot of content. It's a lot of activity with not direct ROI. So how do you encourage your customers to look at the ROI piece of it and understand that it's a necessity to actually advance, the future of their brand and the future of their business?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. And, it's interesting because depending on the type of the organization that we were working with, um, I would kind of categorize folks into a few different buckets, right? So some folks are doing training for revenue, and that's like their main goal. So we have some tech customers that are doing that. We have other training organizations that are doing that, where training is their product. And so they're measuring all of the success around, revenue of products sold and customers and all that piece. There's another bucket where like impact is a really big measurement. And we have like nonprofit organizations that we work with. We even have tech companies that measure impact as a key driver for their organization. But they're looking at a different metric, not necessarily revenue. And then we have kind of a third bucket of customers where they're really focused around support, churn, lifetime of a customer, adoption of features, things like that. And so really the ROI, I guess to your question, the ROI comes down to like, what's kind of the underlying mission of that company when they start the customer education program. If it's revenue, ROI is going to be maybe more straightforward to measure. It's dollars in, dollars out sort of thing. But if it's impact, or if it's lifetime value, or, churn of customers and things like that, like we can lean on kind of product development measurements, stats and numbers and things that we're looking at there, and start to see like, can we draw a correlation between, it's almost like a science experiment. Can we create a hypothesis? Like if we launch this particular effort, we believe that these things are going to happen in our product, and then measure that over time and start to see that. And if you start to see some things lining up and working, then it's time to double down and invest more in those things if you're seeing the results that you want on the other side.
Well, that's great. When I think of my industry, for example, there's a lot of big players in it: Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. They can't just talk about their product all the time. They have to actually educate their customer on what they're going to experience, which is the cloud. And that's how they have thought leadership, and they have a long-standing brand. Yeah. So with your customers, how do you help them see that long-term play and really understand that they need to educate their customers on something greater than just the product?
So when starting that customer education program, if we go back to the three buckets of like revenue, impact, and, user experience or adoption might be a better way to put that third bucket. If we go to those three, they really, kind of all come back to the singular mission of like, why are we doing customer education? And especially in product driven companies, when we work with, those teams, there's a lot of focus around, we need to educate our product or our software or our technology or our algorithm, how it's working and things like that. But what you'll see is kind of in the infancy of a program, that's a wonderful first step. And we always like, it builds excitement. It gets people on board for a project. But what you'll notice is that the life cycle or the longevity of something like that is pretty small. So it's a great way to get off the ground. But long-term, we really hope, especially as like part of our strategy and consulting teams as we work there, we really hope to expand that vision broader and say, how does your product or service fit in the entire ecosystem? And can you educate people on solving the larger problems and position your tool or your software, your product or service? Could you position that strategically throughout, but recognize that you may not be the only solution, or you may not be the only path, but like, can you solve the larger industry issues, or can you educate the larger industry issues?
Well, that's great. And I like that you approach the market that way and educate your customers on that. That really impressed me about you when we first started talking about this. So thank you for sharing on that.
Sure.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about was how customers learn and how they're actually taking in this content. What's the appropriate way to build, for those folks to actually, appropriately respond to the brand and really, actually get the full benefit of what the educator is trying to relay?
It's interesting. So the industry at large, I think, loves video, right? Video content is king. And, YouTube being a wonderful example, however many millions or billions of hours of content, right, are uploaded each hour. We are super drawn and love that medium. Now, we always advise customers or clients, that's not the only medium, right? If you have something super technical and super like minutia stuff, maybe actually having a job aid is a great idea. A PDF that an engineer can pin on their wall while they're at work to reference your product is highly effective, and sometimes there's actually a fatigue of learners like, oh, I have to go watch another video just to get my answers so I can get on with my day, right? So there's this balance, but in the customer education space, I guess you actually have you have the opportunity to really capitalize heavily on video because there's so many affordable mediums to distribute that content.
So Matt, we've talked a lot about this customer education piece, but I want to bring it a little bit more focused on the context of a company educating, their own employees, their customer bases, and, maybe somebody who's a consumer that they would ultimately want to be, part of their overall brand. We've talked a little bit about a couple of brands who have done that well, but I wanted to get your perspective on how people do that effectively and how it again leads into those long-standing, long-term companies that are going to build thought leadership.
Yeah, I remember in our conversation when we first started talking about the idea of getting together today, we were talking about really the opportunity that exists in the marketplace for brands to really not necessarily circumvent traditional education paths, right? But brands really have an opportunity to showcase the expertise and the knowledge that makes their brand wonderful, right? If we think about kind of huge iconic brands in the industries, if I'm, a teenager coming up, getting ready to join the workforce and things like that, and I have the opportunity to go to school and do all these different paths or work a trade, do those different things. But now, not necessarily for the first time ever, but we really have this unique, affordable way to do this where I could actually just learn directly from a brand that I have aspired to be, my entire like teenage growing up lifetime, right? Like I can learn animation from the studios that make the movies I love. I can learn programming from the companies that make the devices that I use every single day. I can learn, screenwriting from the people who wrote the movie that made me want to go to film school anyway, right? So I don't necessarily circumvent traditional education, but brands have an opportunity to really meet customers way early and produce, wonderful experiences way early on that drive customers, right? And maybe product sales and services and stuff does that, but it might also drive their talent as well. Like if I build, an incredible trust in a brand and they become my go-to resource for knowledge in certain areas, if I'm skilled enough, like that might be an avenue for me to work there. Like, well, they taught me everything I know about this particular area. I wonder if I can work there. It seems like a wonderful place. So it's kind of serving dual focus, which isn't something we've talked a lot about with customers, but it is something that we're starting to see. I know Google, for example, just launched the Grow with Google program, which, I don't remember all the specifics, right? But it's geared toward educating people and actually placing them with amazing companies at the end of that as well. So it's kind of like this new hybrid model of customer education and traditional like certifications and learning. So
They eventually, have an employee out of it
yeah.
who then even furthers the brand more. I
Yeah,
think it's great.
yeah, it's like imagine having new hires coming into the company that have been brand ambassadors and fans of you for, a decade, and it just saves so much time, like on the building internal culture and teaming and stuff. Like you've already met them, they've already been through a lot of experiences with you. So my hypothesis would be that they hit the ground running much sooner. So
I want to talk a little bit now about how this interesting virtual world we now live in is really impacting education. Everybody's learning from home now. I think there's going to be a huge expectation for companies to have a lot more content that's accessible via video, blogs, things like that. How do you see this remote learning and this just future of people being responsible for their own education changing the industry overall?
while everyone was going remote and certain businesses were really struggling, by some miracle, we were very fortunate in that everyone immediately realized that they needed to transition to online. So our team actually probably doubled or tripled in what we had to accomplish for clients. And so we were trying to onboard people during a time when everybody else is going away, right? So remote learning is real. And I know a lot of organizations are probably trying to navigate that. The beautiful part is the customer education side of it, right? There's a kind of built-in expectation that customers are remote. The only kind of anomaly that I see there is the other training organizations that we support, kind of transparently, their business model has been, they've been delivering training at companies or consulting products at companies, workshops, strategic events at companies. And that kind of went away. And they said, hey, we still have the same product, but how do we do the same product effectively online? And so, navigating that transition was one thing, but when you say, what's the future of remote learning? That is, I think, still being written, honestly. I do know that Zoom fatigue is real, though. I mean, we probably have this, and Zoom fatigue is real. And I think the very same rule applies to around video learning and pieces like that. Like, there's only so much you can do, but there's one magic secret, and that is getting attention and gaining attention, right? And training for the sake of training without attention and slight little bit of entertainment to keep people there, it's going to be really, really hard. We didn't always do that, but we've learned through making probably several thousand video programs at this point. That attention entertainment factor, just that engagement level, it's got to be huge. It's got to be a huge component of like planning it, scripting it, figuring it out, developing it. Because without attention, the best content, the most beautiful imagery, the studio that your company builds, the remote streaming satellite office, whatever you have, right? Like none of that's really going to matter. And you kind of get back into that webinar mode where everybody's just kind of clicking next on a PowerPoint slide and saying learning's happening. And it's just not.
So Matt, even though we haven't known each other for a very long time, I already know that you are an extremely passionate person. And even though ThinkThru is the focus in your main business, you have this passion project of Course Factory. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what the vision is for that organization as a whole?
Course Factory kind of came out of this passion of, I always wanted to make movies when I was a kid. Like that was something I really wanted to do. My business partner, Lenny, he actually went to school for film. So the two of us together just kind of have this underlying current of, making really great content. What we realized with our customers is, as instructional designers, we're interfacing with experts all the time. Like they're the expert, we're leaning on them for that. And then we're extracting the best pieces of the puzzle and building a program with it and figuring out ways to adapt and make great training programs out of it. But we're still leaning on the experts. And so we actually took the idea and said, well, so many people are now, because it's affordable, right? So many people are now saying, okay, well, as an expert, I need to share. They're not, they're not getting directed to, they're not, getting asked to create a course. Like they're self-thinking like, I can share this. I can make the world a better place with what I know. And so Course Factory really came out of like, well, how do we serve them? Like we're serving companies and brands and things like that, but how do we serve the independent creator, the independent expert that wants to share their message or their knowledge with the world? They might use it to create a new business. They might use it to train their team. They, whatever they want to do with it. But so we said, what if you could have an unlimited amount of course content creators that work for you, no matter what size company you are? You could simply create an account and you could have an entire course building team on the other end of the screen that literally just waits for you to put in things. And then we make the course for you and we send it back. And in like modern video production world, it's super expensive, right? Like you got to pay if you go another revision round, like that's another invoice and expanded scope. And then you've got to, you got to set up time to film and budget and stuff. But with what you and I are doing now in a webcam, you can actually create some amazing content if you think about it the right way. And so there should be nothing in the world that prevents you from going from here to a finished product hands-free. And so that's what Course Factory is. We're hoping that every single person who wants to share what they know with the world, like there's plenty of platforms that let you like post and purchase and e-commerce and all that with it, but you still have to make it. And so we're trying to close the gap on, hey, have an entire team that makes it for you. So
That's cool. And I'm a huge fan as I've gotten to know the platform and your business partner.
yeah,
I think it's a really cool problem that you're solving and a really cool go-to-market initiative. So for those of you interested, we'll share a link where you can have more information and see what Matt's up to with Course Factory. Well, now, Matt, I want to ask you a very important question, and that is around principles. I want to hear from you. What is the core principle that you live by day to day to be successful in business?
transparency. That is the core of who I am, and it's the core of what people know when they work with us. And I think we take transparency more seriously than anything else. I think if we can share and be authentic and real with people, we get to connect and develop relationships both in life, business, within our team that we wouldn't have otherwise. And actually, it's funny that you say that. Our business cards, I care about it so much.
That's cool.
That our business cards are transparent. And and
That's
we
really
take that,
cool.
yeah, we take that from a communication standpoint. We take that from, how we advise and strategize with people. We take that from, if we drop the ball, we do that as well. We take it so seriously that when our clients are doing well in business, we're supporting them. And actually, when we had clients that weren't doing well as a result of COVID, we had all these agreements in place. We actually lowered our agreements and everything and said, look, you're struggling, we'll struggle with you. Like, you don't have to struggle and still figure out how to pay us. Like, we're still going to serve you because we know we're going to come back together. But if we have to figure out these legal things and do all that and just, figure out how to separate officially, nobody wins. So like, when our partners are doing well, we're doing well. And when they're not, we're your partner. So we do the exact same.
So Matt, I would consider you an educator of sorts. And I'm sure that means you spend a lot of time on your own personal development and self-education. So can you tell me a little bit about that importance to you and really your investment to continually be learning and innovating?
Absolutely. I am a lifelong learner, and I think that is a real gift. I think when we stop learning, we literally stop growing, like physiologically. Like, is that a word? You know what I meant? Physiologically, I think we actually start to reverse. And so it's kind of that thing. Like, if you're standing still or not going forward, you're going backward, even if you're standing still. And so it is critically important. I think, I started in music. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, right? So I started in music, and I was really good at school. I was that kid that just figured school out, and I don't know why I was blessed with that, but I was really good at school, and I was really super passionate about music, and being in Nashville, I had great opportunities. If you had asked me when I was 18 or 19 years old, touring with country music bands, that I would be running a tech education company in like 20 years later, right? Like, this wouldn't have even been on the radar. And I think just because we have the magic of the internet, like, this is incredible. We have the magic of the internet. We have unlimited resources when it comes to learning. And, there's time you can never get back. Knowledge, it's going to be really hard, for anyone to take that away from you. And then your people and your relationships. Those are kind of the three things. And so spend your time as wisely as you can. Continue to learn and make sure that you're bettering yourself every day. If it's reading, a hobby, passion, business, whatever, doesn't matter. But learning something new every day, you're literally moving your human body forward and making sure you're taking care of people. And I think learning is part of that. I think you don't take very good care of people until you learn how and develop those skills, and it's unique for each person. So I think learning is critical to life, and I'm just really, really lucky that somehow we figured out to pivot and make a business in this space, because this is probably the best time on earth to be doing this. So.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Well, Matt, thanks for being on the show today. This was so much fun, and I really admire your passion for education, and really giving your customers the best customer experience that they can have. So just keep up the good work. And again, thanks for participating. This was really fun.
Rebecca, thank you so much. This is truly an honor to be able to share this space with you, and you allow me to share the stage with your audience. And I would just encourage anybody, I've got to plug you. You haven't plugged you. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe it, like it. I know that she's rolling out a podcast, so I'm sure that link will be somewhere in this description. Please, 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 please go and follow that podcast. Leave comments on there. And I would even go so far as say, Rebecca, if there's questions that come up, if they leave comments below and you need to phone a friend, I'm happy to jump in and respond to things if folks have customer education related items. So please just let me know.
Yeah, we'll make sure we share your information as well. They know where to find you.
Hey, you got it. Thanks so much. It's been a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll hang out in Nashville soon.
Always. Yeah. Take care.
See you, Matt.